Hello everyone. Welcome to my class on basics of communication. Let me introduce myself. I am Dr. Vandana Vek. Currently, I am working as a professor of English with the Thankar Mahavir University, and I am placed at the Management College, the Thankar Mahavir Institute of Management and Technology. Today, I am going to discuss about communication. What's communication? We all know that we are social human beings. We cannot live without friends, family, colleagues, people in the neighborhood. So we need human beings, they need to interact. And interacting in one form or other is called communication. In the table of contents, there is what's communication, the definition and meaning of communication. Then we have objectives of communication, types, communication flow, barriers of communication, and strategies to overcome barriers of communication. These all topics we are going to cover in our class. Yes. So what is communication means? When we study communication, it provides us a comprehensive insight into the multifaceted different dimensions of communication. And the learning outcomes of this topic are, first of all, comprehensive understanding of communication, then knowledge of communication flow, types, and then awareness of communication levels, identification of communication barriers, and strategies for overcoming communication barriers. Now let's start first with the meaning of communication. What does communication means? Communication is a simple process in which we exchange information, we share information, we share our ideas, thoughts, feelings with one person or among a group. Communication can be of various types. It can be written communication, oral communication, sign communication, or digital communication. The definition of communication. Let's first define what is communication. Communication is the art of transferring information among people or individuals or group of people. When we share our ideas, like we friends, whether we are with friends, we are with colleagues, or we are with our own family members, we need to share information. Means we need to share our thoughts, we need to share our feelings. We do it. We generally share our thoughts with our friends, our family members, maybe people in the neighborhood, or colleagues at the office, at the workplace. So all this is called communication. Now, general definition. What are in general terms? It is simply sharing of emotions, ideas, information. But there are other ways also how we can define communication. The other one is linguistic definition. The linguistic here, the term linguistic means language. So when we communicate with somebody in a particular language, right? Supposing there is a person who is Gujarati. So he will be communicating with his Gujarati fellow member, friend or colleague in Gujarati. So that comes under the category of linguistic communication. That means when we are using a particular language, particular symbols or particular signs to communicate. Then the next is business communication. Business communication is that on the business arena, when at the business level, when we communicate with our clients, when we communicate with our different people, with our colleagues, with our clients within the organization, or for the benefit of the business outside the communication, that is called business communication. Last is technological communication. Technological communication is where communication takes place with the help of technology. Like we are sending emails, or we are communicating through phone, or we are communicating through PPTs. Any form of technology and aids of technology, that is called technological communication. Now, key aspects of communication. These are the key aspects of communication. The first key aspects of communication, or we can also say that these are the elements of communication. These elements are sender. Number one, sender. When we communicate with somebody, there is a person who is said to be the sender. Means the person who sends the message to another person. Supposing, let's understand this with the help of an example. Supposing I want to convey the message to a friend. So whatever I speak, whatever is there in my mind, I will convey it to my friend. So I am the sender of the message. The second is the message. The message is that maybe there is some idea in my mind, there is some important notice, there is my feelings I want to share. So any form of message means whatever I want to share, that is called message. Number three is the channel. The channel is through which the message is communicated. The channel is, let's say it is the words. The words in which, like, it can be spoken words or it can be written words. It can be through email. So these all, or it can be through some signals or some signs. So these are called, these all come under the category of channels of communication. After the channel, we have recipient. Who is the recipient? Means obviously when we are communicating the message has to go across to somebody. So that somebody for whom the message is meant, that person is called the recipient of the message. Means the person, the receiver of the message, to whom, let's say I'm talking to my friend and I'm voicing out my views, my ideas to my friend. So that friend is the recipient of the message. So to whomsoever the message is intended, that person is called the recipient of the message. And it is a very important element. Then the next is the context. The context means the context in which the message is being communicated. Means in what relation. Let's say, I'll give you an example. Let's say I ask my friend, one day I spoke to my friend, I said it is Saturday and Saturday we'll be going for the movie. We have decided. So on Saturday afternoon, I'll ask her, are we going? So are we going is a message that is to be communicated. But then it is in the context. It is in which context? That once earlier the people have discussed that we will be going for the movie. So this is called the context or the relation in which the message is communicated, to which the message is linked. That is called context. Now the next are the objectives of, next is the process of communication. Now process of communication, you can see that how the message goes from the sender. The message is communicated from the sender. The message is encoded. Encoded means whatever thought is there in my mind, I put that thought in words. So that is called encoding. Then after encoding through the channel, the message goes to the receiver. The receiver decodes the message and understands what is the message. So the message is decoding and the receiver understands what is the message. And after decoding, the receiver gives the answer or the feedback. That is called, and if the sender of the message gets the correct feedback or the correct answer, then it is said that the communication cycle is complete. Communication process or communication cycle. So one important factor of the communication process is feedback. Means, now I will explain this with the help of an example. Like I spoke to my friend, I told her something. I said, I told her something, and my friend, the message went to my friend and she responded. Means, I asked my friend, what is your name? I asked a person, what is your name? The person means I encoded the message in words, the thought was in my mind. I encoded the message in the words. The words are, what is your name? through the channel, means through the spoken words, the message was sent across. Means the channel was the spoken words and the message was sent across to the other individual. The person whom the question was addressed, that person, he received the message, he decoded the message, means he understood what I was trying to ask. And when he understood the message, he gave me a reply. And he said, my name is Anu Rastogi. So, my name is Anu Rastogi. That is the feedback which I received from the recipient. So, the receiver or the recipient of the message, the answer which they gave, that is called the feedback. And if that feedback matches with the question that has been asked by the sender, or we can also say that if it is the desired response which has been expected by the sender, then the communication process is complete. So this is called communication process also, and it is called communication cycle also. Then there is one more element in the communication process, and that element is noise. Noise is the distraction, the disturbance that is created in the communication process. So this noise can be simply like supposing in a class when the teacher is teaching and many students are sitting and many students are listening, but some of them might be talking also. So that little murmuring sound in the background, that is called noise. Sometimes this noise is also of the traffic outside the room. The noise is also when if we are viewing something on the television or on phone, we are listening to somebody on the phone and there is disturbance in between. That is also called noise. So these are different types of noise. Now we come to the topic objectives of communication. Now whatever we do, whatever activities take place, there are also always certain objectives. So there are objectives of communication. That when the communication takes place, what is the objective of the communication? Means when I am talking to my friend, like it can be a little, I want to vent out my feelings, I want to tell her something that happened at my workplace, or I just want to share my feelings or emotions regarding something. So that is one way. Thus, there are different ways, there are different objectives of communication, and one after the other, we will be taking care of the objectives of communication. So the first objective of communication is information sharing. Information means communication is done most of the time when we want to share our information. When we want to share some information. It can be at the formal level, it can be at the informal level also. Formal level means when, supposing at the workplace, I need to address my colleagues and I want to tell my colleagues of the latest happening, something new that is being incorporated, or something new that has taken place in the company which they need to know. So we share that information. Or something has happened at my workplace and I go and I share it with my friend. That is also called information sharing. So information sharing, generally there is a very good example that a company issues a press release when a company needs to launch something new. Let's say there is a company named, a very famous popular company named Samsung. So Samsung company, it has launched a new washing machine. So what do? They organize a press release. So that way they are giving information to the public that the new machine has been launched. So that comes under the category of information sharing. So first and the foremost objective of communication is information sharing. The second one is persuading. Means when we try to persuade somebody. Persuade means when we try to convince somebody for something. That is, I can give you one example. Like when during the election time, the political parties, the candidates of the political parties, they hold meetings, they address people, at mass level, and they try to convince the people to give vote to that particular party. So that is called persuading or convincing. The third one is building relationships. One of the important objective of communication is building relationship. When we share information with others, when we need to build relationships, when we want to communicate in future also with other people. Like if we think about, like, if I meet somebody at a party, I would like to speak to that person. I would ask that person her name, where they work, where they live, who is there in the family. So we are communicating, and if the person is interested, he would also respond to my questions. So this way what happened? After 2 or 3 hours, we build a relationship, we become friends. So means for building relationship, we need to communicate. And on the other hand, at the formal stage means when we are in a company, where at the workplace, when one company, one colleague, one company, when they contact the other people, when they send through emails, when they telephone, when they hold meetings, or in certain meetings when many people meet of different companies and when they speak to each other, that also comes under the category of building relationships. Then next is facilitating understanding. Means communication is done to ensure that whatever is being said is properly communicated. Means it is communicated as well as it is properly understood by the other party for whom the communication is. There I can give you an example of a teacher. You all know teachers and students relationship. You all know. Means a teacher in the class, she tries to explain a concept. She explains a concept to the students. And sometimes, looking at the face of the students, the teacher knows that yes, some might not have understood. So what she will do? She will try to communicate in some other words, in some other ways, or using more simple words, or trying to give more examples. So this is that when we want the other person to understand what is being communicated. So communication is there to enhance comprehension or understanding. That is also an objective of communication. Then the next one is encouraging feedback. Encouraging feedback today, whether it's a meeting, whether it's a presentation, or it's a class, or whether it's related to a teacher or related to a subject. Everybody is interested in feedback, and feedback has become an essential role. Has started playing an essential role. The essential role in feedback is like the subject which is being taught to the students. The student gave the feedback that whether the subject which has been taught is useful for them or not, whether they are able to understand or not. Then the feedback is being asked from the students regarding the teachers, that whether whatever the teacher is being teaching and how the teacher is teaching, whether it is effective, whether it is easy to understand, or it is up to the level of the students. So that is also feedback. Then in companies also, like if we go and attend any meetings, then at the end we have to fill the feedback. So the company wants to know that whatever the company has organized, whether it has been fruitful for the people who had attended or not. Let's say sometimes there are guest lectures, there are presentations on any particular topic. Then also the people conducting the lectures or the presentations, they require a feedback. There are seminars, there are meetings. For everything, a feedback form is shared, and it is become mandatory for the people to fill the feedback, so that the person conducting or organizing, they come to know that what are their mistakes, which they can improve, and whether the topics which have been shared, whether they were fruitful for the attendees, for the audience, or not. So for this also, communication is required. Our next objective is resolving conflicts. Yes, communication plays a very, very, very important role. And I'm putting emphasis on this because in today's life, maximum problems are being faced by the people at different levels, whether it is family, whether it is workplace, or whether it is between friends or neighborhood. The most of the problems are arising because of lack of communication. We all are so busy in our life that we are running helter-skelter, and we do not have time for neither our family members or our friends or neighborhood or colleagues. So, lot of problems are arising because of lack of communication. And these problems can be resolved in a very simple manner by just communicating. Because misunderstandings are being created. Somebody, if you are busy in your work and your colleague, you don't say hello to your colleague, and the colleague might think like he's arrogant, or he or she, that person is arrogant. You don't talk to your neighbor. You don't talk to your neighbor because you are always in a rush due to your responsibilities or obligations. And the neighbor would think that this person doesn't like mixing up. Well, sometimes the case is exactly the opposite. So in such cases, communication, a little hi, a little hello, or if there is a communication, go, sit, talk to the person, resolve the problem, and save your relationship. So any kind of conflict can be resolved. It has been said that big problems can just be resolved over a small amount of time. So communication is very important for resolving conflicts. Promoting engagement. Promoting engagement means when we want people to get engaged, then also we communicate. At social media, like if there is a thought in my mind and I want to share a thought, or there is a perspective, I have a perspective for anything, something that has happened. Some new bill has come, some new policy has been made, and I want to show my views, and I want other people also to give their views. So I post that. I post my views. I'll post a certain post on social media, and what the people who are on my social media group, they will be reacting to it. So that way they will also get engaged to that particular issue or that particular problem or that particular habit. So communication is also required for engagement. When we want people to get engaged, when we want more and more people to get engaged to any particular thing. So very common thing today is social media. We post it on our Insta, we post it on our social media, Facebook, or we post it on our WhatsApp group, and people start reacting. So that is also one way. Communication is also one way of attracting the attention of people and engaging people. Providing motivation. So providing motivation. Another objective of communication is providing motivation. That means how we can motivate people. Through communication, we can motivate people. For this, I can give you an example. Like Clean India was a slogan which was given by our Prime Minister Narendra Modi. So for that Swachh Bharat, okay. So for that, there were a lot of programs which were conducting, and it was identified that the problem lies more in the places, in the slum areas, in the areas where educated people are less, where more people are illiterate, and the weaker sections of the society. So at that time, it became the responsibility of certain NGOs, certain social groups which went from place to place and they motivated people. They motivated people by giving lectures or showing small pictures, and they motivated people that we need to keep our surroundings clean. So we can motivate through communication. Like I can give you an example that as a teacher, if I feel that my students are not doing well in any particular exam or any particular subject, I would call them, I will counsel them, I would motivate them to take action, to do better in exams, to study hard, and if they have problems, they can discuss. So these all the things means motivating somebody. That is also that can be done through communication. That is also one objective of communication. Then our next point is that is educating. So obviously education cannot take place. We cannot educate anybody until and unless we communicate. As a teacher, I go to my class, I deliver my lectures, ask the students questions, and when they give the questions, I understand that whether there has been a comprehension, whether there has been an understanding of the topic of the lecture that I have delivered or not. So for education, communication is very, very important. So communication can be through lectures, communication can be through PPTs, communication can be through small clippings or anything. So next is coordinating. Obviously, for coordination, we need communication. Another objective of communication is coordination. Means when we coordinate with others, means if I want my colleague to do something, or if I want my family member to do some work for me, obviously I will have to communicate to that person and coordinate with them. We have to go somewhere and I want my husband to come and pick me from the college. So I'll ask him, I will have to coordinate with him. Okay, 4 o'clock, okay, you are not free at 4 o'clock, okay, so we'll make it 4. So coordination can be done only through communication. When we are able to communicate to the other person our requirement and we are able to understand his requirement, then only we can coordinate. So coordination is required at the workplace. Like a project manager, he communicates that what he needs is to his team members, that what he needs, how the project should be taken forward, how the project should be done, how we have to make the files, how we have to do the written work or the office work or whatever is related to the project. So beforehand only the project leader, he has to communicate to his team members that what is the project about, how we will move forward with the project, and who will be in charge of which project, which particular area, and how we can submit the report. So for all these things, we require communication. Means we need to take a meeting, we need to discuss these things, and further it can be emailed also in one or the other forms. Another objective of communication is expressing emotions. Means expressing emotions. Today I am very happy. I'll immediately go to my friend and I'll share my happiness. Today I am very sad. I'll talk to my mother, I'll talk to my sister, I'll talk to my brother or a friend, and I'll tell them that I'm very sad. I mean, this thing has happened. So we express emotions also through communication. We communicate to the other person, and supposing a student has done very well in an exam, and say, I'll go and pat his back and I'll say, okay, congratulations, you have done really well. So this communication means my feelings that I feel proud and I'm happy for his achievement. That also needs to be conveyed to the person, and that can be done by communicating. Sitting at home, sitting at my place, feeling happy in my heart that like, yes, one of my students has done very well will not solve the purpose. Means whatever I am feeling, I need to express my emotions, and that needs to be communicated to the other person. So our next point is reinforcing identity and culture. So this is a very, very important point, because today we all are are losing our identity. We all are getting away from our roots, our cultural heritage. So, for that, we need to communicate to our coming generations. We need to tell our coming generations that what is the cultural heritage of our country, right? So we are the cultural heritage, the things related to our culture. They all are there in their mind. They all are incorporated in them, but we need to reinforce them. So for reinforcing identity and culture, we need to communicate. So sometimes, generally we say, I can give you an example, that on 15th August, 26th January, Diwali, Holi, Eid, Christmas, all these festivals and national days, all of them are celebrated in the schools. Why? Because we need to tell our coming generations the importance of our Republic Day, the importance of our Independence Day, the importance of our festivals. Our festivals like Holi, Diwali, Eid. What importance those festivals hold for us. So this all reinforcing can be done through communication. Now we will discuss the flow of communication. How the communication flows means how the communication moves, means when I am talking to my friend. So that is also one way of communicating. When that moves from one person to another. Then when I am talking to my colleague, that is also one way of communication. Then I am talking to my boss, that is also one way of communication. So this is called communication. How the communication flows from one individual to another. That is called communication flow. So there are different types of communication flows. That is the different types of ways how the communication flows. First is upward communication. Upward communication is the communication when a junior communicates to his senior. That is called upward communication. Like in an educational organization, when a teacher speaks to the principal, when a teacher speaks to the HOD, is downward communication. Downward communication is the communication when it flows from top to bottom. Just as the upward communication, it flows from bottom to top. In the same manner, downward communication, it flows from top to bottom. Means when the head of the institution, let's say the principal sir or the director sir, when he wants to convey some message or some important information to the faculty members, that is called downward communication. Then the third type is the third type of communication is horizontal communication. Horizontal communication is when communication flows from one person of the same level to the person of the other person at the same level. That is called horizontal communication. It is even called lateral communication. Means when one colleague gives information to the other colleague, or when the HOD of one department communicates to the HOD of the other department. That is called lateral communication. Means communication that flows between the same level. That is called lateral communication. Now, the next type of communication is diagonal or vertical communication. The diagonal or the vertical communication is that when the director or principal of one college communicates to the faculty of other college. That is called vertical or diagonal communication. So these are four different types or flows of communication. Then the other type of communication is written communication and visual communication. Written communication is that when the communication takes place through the written form, whether it is a letter, whether it is an email, whether it is a notice or a mail, or any other form of written communication. That is called, means we write and we send. Or it can be a report also, it can be a proposal also, it can be a memo also. So all these come under the category of written communication. Then the next type of communication is visual communication, means when we try to show some clipping, when we try to show some picture, or there are certain symbols or there are certain signs, that is called visual communication. Now we have the levels of communication. Communication takes place at many levels. There are different levels at which the communication takes place. The first and the foremost is intrapersonal level. Intrapersonal level is that when a person talks to himself. That is called intrapersonal level. Means, supposing I have to take some decision and I am thinking whether I should do this or not. So that discussion which is going inside me, that is called intrapersonal level of communication. When we are daydreaming, when we are talking to ourselves, when an individual is struggling inside whether to do a work or not to do a work, or sometimes we raise questions and then we try to find answers of those questions within ourselves without discussing it with anyone. That is called intrapersonal. The next form of communication is interpersonal communication. Interpersonal communication is direct and face-to-face communication. It is like when two people are sitting in front of each other and they are talking to each other. That is called interpersonal communication. It can be among two, it can be between two people, or it can be among a group of people. Now, interpersonal communication is direct communication, means it requires two people or it requires more than two. Then it can be communicated between small group or it can be communicated between a large group. It is like the meetings. It is like the meetings which are held in offices, at workplace, any kind of workplace, or it is the whole family sitting together and communicating to each other on any particular topic or just gossiping and talking. So that is called interpersonal communication. Now next is small group communication, means when the group is small. I am saying small group communication because there are two types of communication in this category also. Small group communication, when the group is small. Okay, so that is called small group communication. And when the group is large, that is called mass communication. So that is why small group communication means when the number of people is less and when they are communicating to each other, that is called small group communication. And mass communication is the communication in which we have a large number of audience. When we are addressing or when we are talking to a large number of audience, that is called mass communication. Now then another type of communication is organizational communication. Organizational communication is that when the communication takes place among the members of the organization. It can be related to any work. It is generally the meetings which are organized in an organization where all the members they take part in the meeting, or a small group. That depends on the type of meeting, that what kind of meeting the organization is holding. So that means the communication, whether it is written, whether it is oral. Because when I am talking about communication, it is not only about the oral communication. It can be written communication also. that whether when in an organization emails are sent to most of the members or the emails are sent to the people who are concerned with it. That is called organizational communication. Public communication. After organizational, it is public communication. For public communication, we can understand it is understood by the name when we need to inform anything to the public. That is called public communication. Sometimes there is a notice by the government, and the notice is a very small notice, and it is in the newspaper. So it is regarding some particular people. That is called public communication. Means when the government issues certain notice for a particular category or for the general public, that is called public notice, public communication. Means when, like, there are very good two examples which I can think of right now, that when there was demonetization, the Prime Minister, the Honorable Prime Minister, came to the news and he addressed the public regarding the demonetization. So that is also a form of public notice when the public is being informed. Then when Corona time also, the same thing happened. The Honorable Prime Minister, he addressed the people and he spoke about the imposing of lockdown. So these all are public notices, and simultaneously the things were in the newspapers the next day. Now, when there is a bank, let's say Canada Bank, he has to address his clients, some particular clients. So a notice will be published in the newspaper. It will be printed in the newspaper. It is for the clients of Canada Bank. So that also comes under the category of public notice. Now, mass communication we have already discussed. When I had discussed about the small group communication, I had discussed about mass communication. Means when a large number of audience is addressed, when the message has to reach a large number of audience, that is called mass communication. Whether it is through our social media sites, whether it is through our TV announcements, or whether it is the notices which are being published in the newspaper. Now, the next type is intercultural communication. Intercultural communication is that when the communication takes place to different communities or to different cultural communities between people who belong to different culture. And this cultural exchange, it involves sharing and communicating ideas with others. Means sharing our information, sharing our ideas with the other people. And a very good example of cultural communication is that when different cultural exchange programs are organized by schools, colleges. So the students from the different culture, teachers from the different cultures, from the different zones, when they come, they meet each other, and in these collaborations, means, let's say, if we give an example, if I explain it with the help of an example, that Kashmir and Uttar Pradesh, let's say these two states, they have a cultural exchange program. So what will happen? The students and the teachers from Kashmir, they and the people from the students and the teachers from Uttar Pradesh, they will meet at a particular place. It can be Kashmir, it can be any place in Uttar Pradesh, anywhere. And then when they meet, they exchange ideas, they exchange information, they show the things of their culture. Means it can be educational, it can be cultural thingy also. Means like how, first of all, when it is a cultural exchange between the schools, so they will show that what pattern, how the working is being followed. So both the schools, they will exchange. Then the cultural programs which are organized, how they are organized. Then the festivals which are celebrated. So all these things, this all comprises, this all is called cultural exchange. So for cultural coordination also, for cultural exchange programs also, communication is required. So that is also one type of communication. Now, the next type of communication is mediated communication. The mediated communication is that when the communication takes place with the help of some medium, that is called mediated communication. Like the medium of communication can be email. The medium of communication can be the spoken words. The medium of communication can be the written words, or it can be any announcement through any social media sites. So all this come under the category of mediated communication. Now after this, the next point which we are going to discuss are barriers to communication. We have been talking about communication throughout. Okay, different forms, different types, flow of communication, levels of communication, objectives of communication. But now we are going to discuss the barriers to communication, means the obstruction that takes place when the communication goes on. Means how the communication is obstructed. What are the barriers that obstruct the communication? Now, for one simple example of barriers to communication is like what things that pose, what points they pose as an obstruction in the communication. So I can give you a very simple example for that, and that simple example is that when in a class, when a teacher is teaching and many students are making noise, so that noise is the obstruction, that noise is the barrier to communication, because in a class of 50 or in a class of 60, maybe 40 students are interested to listen, 20 are not interested and they are making noise. So, but those 40 who are interested to listen, their communication is hindered. They are not able to listen, and then simultaneously they are not able to answer, they are not able to respond if the teacher raises a question to them. So that is because of the hindrance, the noise created by the other children, that is called the barrier to communication. In the same manner, I can give you one more simple example. When I am talking, or anybody, if we are talking to our friends on phone and then there are signal issues, and the voice is breaking or the voice is wavering, and I am not able to understand properly what she is saying, and consequently it happens with her also. That is also called an obstruction or a hindrance or a barrier to communication. So under the barriers of communication, there are different types of barriers. Those barriers are physical barriers. So the physical barriers means when the outside noise. The physical barriers means that when some obstruction is created during the communication from some outside sources. That is called physical barrier to communication. That is like if we are talking, I am taking a class, my students are listening, and then a lot of noise is created from outside, like a truck with a music system playing very loudly songs. A music system playing songs very loudly is moving from the outside. So that is called physical barrier. Because of that music, because of those songs, what I am trying to communicate, that my students are not able to understand. That is called physical barrier. Means if the class is going on inside and a generator very close to my class is running, so the noise of the generator, it makes me unaudible to the students sitting at the back. So that also is called a physical barrier to communication. Psychological barrier. Psychological barrier to communication. The psychological barriers are that when, due to our own certain emotional stage, due to our own mindset, when we do not understand what the person across is trying to say. So another example means I'm giving you a lot of examples so that whatever I'm trying to say, whatever points I'm making, they are easily understandable. Means you are able to understand them very easily. So stress and anxiety, then emotional state, then perception and attitude. These all pose psychological barrier. These all come under the category of psychological barriers. First of all, let's say I'm in a lot of stress. My student comes to me and he says, "Ma'am, listen, today I had bunked the class because there was this problem. But because of my own anxiety or my own stress, I'm not ready to listen what he says. And I just shun him away. And I just say that you please go away. I don't listen to him." So that is a psychological barrier. That due to my own personal problem, because maybe it can be anxiety also, there is some work which has been asked from me and I have to submit that work and I'm not ready to listen. In between, I'm struggling to do that work so that I can give that work on time. And my student comes and he has some problem, or he comes with some issue, and I am not ready to understand it. So that is a psychological barrier. Then the second type of barrier is that when perception and attitude means I have a perception that one particular student in my class is very naughty, and I says like whatever happens, always the reason behind any naughty activity in the class is that particular student. And next time when I go to the class and I see that a window pane has been broken, and I immediately start shouting on that student that you are sitting next to the window pane, and because he is the naughty boy and he is the one who is behind all the notorious activities in my class, I start shouting at him without listening, and he tries to say that no ma'am, but I'm not ready to listen. So that is called the attitude and the perception, because I have developed a negative attitude. I have developed a perception towards that person. So that is called perception. Then the third, attitude and perception. Then the third is the emotional stress. The emotional state means like if I'm very happy or if I'm very sad. In both the cases, I'm unable to understand what the person across is trying to say. Like supposing something has happened with me and I'm crying, and the person comes and trying to console me, "Listen, you got the thing wrong," but I'm not ready to listen. I say, "Listen, please leave me alone. I'm not." So because of that sad emotional state, I shun away the person and I do not listen to what the other person is trying to communicate. So these are called emotional barriers. These are called psychological barriers due to our certain emotions, due to our particular mindset, due to our attitudes and perceptions, when we do not understand what the other person is trying to say. So they are psychological barriers. Then after the psychological barriers, the next category is the language barriers. The next category is the language barriers. Obviously, language poses a very big barrier. Today, if I go to South and the languages which are spoken in South, they all are different languages. So I'll find it very difficult to communicate what I want to the other people. Or even if I go abroad, let's say I go to Germany or I go to France or I go to any other country where I do not know the language. And if I come across people, because there are certain countries at the global end who are restricted to their own national languages. So if in that particular country I do not know their language and they do not know English, so then it becomes very, very difficult for me to communicate what I'm trying to say. I can give you an example, a very live example, that once I went to China, and obviously I did not know Chinese, and the Chinese people, they did not know English. So it became very difficult for me to communicate my views, my ideas to those people. So such are the language barriers. Then in this another point of language barriers is like the jargons and the slangs that we use. Means that the jargons are the words, if you all know, jargons are the technical words of any particular field. Now let's say that I meet a medical professional and or let's say I'm a patient, I go to the doctor and the doctor, he writes a prescription, and in that prescription he writes one medicine is to be taken OD, the other BD, and the third TD. So I am unable to understand because that is a medical jargon. So what is the meaning? OD means The people who are not aware of these jargons, they will find it very difficult. They find it very difficult to understand. So that is OD is once a day, BD is twice a day, and TD is thrice a day. So these are so every field has its own jargons, and it becomes difficult for a person who belongs to some other field to understand those jargons. Let's say I am a teacher. Okay, so in my field, class tests we call them CTs. But a person from the medical field would understand CT as a CT scan. Or a person from some other field might have had another interpretation. So these jargons, slangs, and technical words, they pose a communication barrier. Accent and dialect. Yes, the people, a very good example of this is that the people from America, the Americans, they have a different accent. They use slangs. They have a different accent. So we people find it very difficult at times to understand what they are trying to say. So in the same manner, if I speak about English, if I go to Gujarat, I will find the Gujarati accent in the English which is being spoken there. If I go to South, I found the accent of that particular place. If I go to Punjab, I find the accent. So sometimes it becomes difficult. When the accent changes, it becomes very difficult to understand. And the person across, if he's trying to say something, the other person is unable to understand. So these are the language barriers. Then after this, the next category is the cultural barriers. So the cultural barriers means when we are unaware of the culture of the other people. So that poses a barrier. Means if I am trying to say something to the other person, let's say the other person might not be able to understand because of the difference of the culture. Now, I can give you one example. In some cultures, it is said that the shoes should be left outside the house. Means people do not prefer that anybody wearing shoes coming inside. So let's say I follow this pattern, and if somebody comes inside my house wearing the shoes, and I ask them to take their shoes off outside, they might not like it. They might not like it because they are in the habit of walking inside the shoes. So this poses one cultural barrier. So there are different things which pose a cultural barrier. Then the values and the beliefs. The values and the beliefs of different cultures. Now here I can give you one more example. That if you go to America, the American people are very straightforward. So if you go once to their house, they will simply ask you once, like, would you like to have tea or coffee? If you refuse, they will accept it. They will not ask you for the next time because they are very straightforward people. But on the other hand, if we see the Indians, and specifically the people from northern India, if anybody comes, any guest comes to your house, we will offer them water. If they don't ask, if they don't refuse, then we will offer them cold drink, or we will offer them tea, and we will make it sure that they eat or drink something, because that is our culture. But on the other hand, the Americans, when they do not offer you the next time, it appears as if they are rude. So these are all cultural barriers. So the next point which we will be discussing here are organizational barriers. Means the communication barriers that are created in an organization. There are a lot of people working in an organization, and there can be barriers, and the reasons for the barriers can be like, it can be hierarchical structure, because of the hierarchical structure, or because of the policies and rules, or because of lack of communication. Means, now again I will give certain examples. Hierarchical structure. Hierarchical structure means that most of the time in the organizations, the communication that flows is downward communication. Means the communication flows downward, means from the hierarchy. From the top, the boss, he communicates. Most of the time, the communication flow is from boss to the colleagues. Like in our college, in a college, it is from the director to the teachers, or principal to the teachers, or this kind of hierarchical structure in which sometimes there is a lack of space. Lack of space means that the written communication, like the communication which is the things which are communicated to the juniors. So they are not able to reply, or even if they have any communication, if they have any problems, they are not able to communicate. So that is a communication barrier. Then the second point of organizational barrier is policies and rules. There are certain policies, there are certain rules which are imposed by a company. So that because of those policies, because of those rules, also the other people are unable to communicate. Then lack of communication, because sometimes the higher ups are not available due to any number of reasons. The higher ups are not available, and so if there is any problem at the root level, that problem does not reach the hierarchy. So these are all organizational barriers. Then after the organizational barriers, there are interpersonal barriers also. Interpersonal barriers means, again, interpersonal communication. We know that it is a communication between two people or two or more people. So when there is lack of trust, means I might not communicate with a friend or a colleague whom I do not trust. Obviously, I will not call such a person a friend whom I do not trust, but whosoever. It can be a neighbor, it can be a relative, it can be a colleague. So if I do not trust that particular person, I might not like to communicate any kind of information to that particular person. I might not share my ideas, my views, my feelings to that person. Then power dynamics. Power dynamics is also one thing, that is like the people who have the people who have power, they can affect the willingness. These are the people who are more powerful, they have their own will to share their information. The people who are simple, the people who are not in those influential positions, even if they know something, they might not come to the forefront and communicate. Then poor listening skills. Poor listening skills are that when the person across to whom you are communicating does not pay attention to what you are saying. So you lose interest telling that person, and he obviously not paying attention will not listen. So these come under the category of these come under the category of interpersonal barriers. Now, over reliance on technology. That also poses a barrier. That when you over rely on technology, that means something can happen very quickly. Means I have sent a mail to the organization concerned, and the mail doesn't reach. I don't even know that whether the mail has reached the correct person or not. So that is when we over rely on technology. That also leads to communication barrier. Technological barriers. Again, technological barrier, there are certain technical issues. Means there is an important information I want to convey to my friend, and the phone will just not connect. Okay, I am trying to speak to her, and her voice is wavering, and my voice is wavering. So we are not able to communicate. So these all come under the category of technical issues. Then means over-reliance on technology also create barriers. Now we will discuss the strategies. The strategies to overcome communication barriers. How we can overcome these communication barriers. The first one is feedback. A very, very important thing that I would repeat again is the feedback. Until and unless you come to know from the other person that whatever you have said, whether it has been clearly mentioned, whether the person has understood clearly or not, that we can come to know only from the feedback. And if we have the feedback, then if there is any mistake, we can make the correction. The second is active listening. Means we need to listen. We need to develop active listening. Means whatever we are trying to listen, whenever we are here listening to somebody, we concentrate. We just don't hear. Okay, there is a difference between hearing and listening. Hearing is the traffic moving outside, that we are hearing. The sound of the fan, that is hearing. But that hearing becomes listening when the sounds are registered in the mind and when the mind responds to those sounds. That is, then it becomes listening. The teacher is speaking in a class and the student is daydreaming. That is hearing. But when the students are listening properly, when they are hearing with concentration, that becomes listening. So we need to develop the qualities of listening and active listening. That means we listen properly what is being said to us, and we do not miss out on any important points. Then the next is simplify language. We should try to use our simple language as possible, because not everyone will be able to comprehend what is said in a difficult language or when jargons and slangs are being used. Then the next is improve environment. Means we need to improve the environmental conditions. Like if a class is going on, we need to check that no noise from the outside, that something is running, some machine is running, or the fan inside is making noise. So these environmental barriers need to be checked. Then the next is training and development. Means we need to try proper training for effective communication. Means proper training needs to be given to the people. Then the next is utilizing technology. Means we need to utilize technology the way technology can be helpful. It becomes our servant. It helps us in communicating what we are trying to communicate. So, recognizing these barriers to communication, recognizing these barriers and overcoming these barriers is very, very important for proper communication, for effective communication. Now, I would like to stress a little upon the effective communication. We have discussed a lot about communication. We have discussed a lot about the types, flow, levels, and barriers to communication and strategies to overcome the barriers of communication. This all we have discussed. Now, I would like to highlight a little about what is effective communication. So, effective communication is the process of exchanging the ideas, sharing ideas, but by active listening. Means the person who listens to you, he listens very actively. And when you are communicating, there is lot of clarity and conciseness. So there are certain things which we need to keep in mind while we are communicating, so that the communication becomes effective. The first is clarity and precision. Clarity and precision. That is, first is clarity and precision means that whatever message we are going to give, the message has to be very, very clear. Our message should be clear and it should be concise. Because if the messages are very long, obviously the people might not be interested to listen to those messages. Then second is active listening. Means total engagement. A person needs to engage completely in whatever is being communicated. If we listen properly, then only the effective communication can take place. And apart from listening, feedback is required. If the feedback is taken, then it ensures that whether the message has been communicated properly or not. Then non-verbal communication. Communication becomes effective when there is eye contact. When you are looking directly into the eyes of the person. Then from the eyes of the person, you can make out that whether the person is able to understand, first of all. Second thing is that when the eye contact is maintained, the person would not dare to date. Okay, yes, so that from the eyes, from with the eye contact, you can make out that whether the person is able to understand or not. So eye contact is very important. Then there are certain body language point that like body language is also important for effective communication. Means your gestures, your postures, the way the hand movements, the hand movements, the way you speak, and the tone which is being used. This all also makes the communication effective. Then the next is empathy and respect. Empathy and respect means first of all we understand. We understand what the other person is trying to speak. We understand that what is the need for the other person to communicate. So that understanding is very important. Then respect, valuing. We need to value that if somebody has come to deliver a lecture, if somebody has come to give a presentation, then there might be some reason. And it can be of a lot of help and importance to us. So if we value something, obviously we will listen to the things and the person will be able to communicate effectively. Then the next is feedback mechanism. Feedback mechanism means that two-way interaction. Means the process, when we take the feedback, the interaction has to be two-way. Means asking questions and the speaker asking questions, the audience giving answers. Then the audience asking questions and speaking, clarifying their doubts. Then constructive feedback means feedback points should be made in such a manner that the feedback which is provided should be constructive, which is further helpful to the speaker, so that the speaker can avoid those particular mistakes in future. Then appropriate medium. Effective communication can take place only when the medium through which communication is done is effective. That is the medium through which communication is done is appropriate. Like if we are showing the PPTs, obviously it has to be clear whatever is being written in the PPT. Then if it is in very small font, then the people sitting at the back, they will not be able to understand. If the communication medium is some speech, then the voice has to be loud. So we have to adjust according to the medium, according to our requirement. Then emotional intelligence means self-awareness, understanding one's own emotions and how they influence communication. This point is very important because if you are happy, your presentation would be very good. You will be able to communicate somebody in a very good manner. Supposing you are sad, or supposing you are sad, so what your approach will become pessimistic, and you will find negativity in the positive things also. Then regulations means managing emotions. We need to manage our emotions because even however sad I am, however depressed I am, but when I go to take my class, I cannot take that depressed face or that depressed tone to my students. So that I have to behave abnormal self. I have to be my normal when I go and address my students. So this is something which is very important because whatever, like I believe as a teacher, I believe that if I take interest, I'm happy, I'm excited about the lecture which I'm going to deliver, at least I'll be able to motivate some of my students to understand. Means not some, a good number of students to understand. But if I myself am depressed, I am inactive, and I feel boredom while delivering my lecture, obviously my students will go off to sleep. So this is something which is very, very important. Then preparation and adaptability. Preparation and adaptability means that we need to prepare. If the communication, whatever we are trying to say to the other person, we need to prepare. And then we need to prepare, we need to adapt ourselves to the situation. If I'm going to my class and I need to communicate, I need to give a lecture to my students, and there is a lot of heat in the class. Obviously, if I am fidgeting, the students will also start fidgeting. So we need to adapt to the situation. And then preparation, I need to prepare. Before delivering a lecture, I need to be well prepared with my lecture. Then planning means we need to plan, we need to have that adaptation, we need to plan beforehand that how much content I have to discuss today, and how much will be what will be the examples I will be using, and how I will be explaining it to my students. Then the next point is mutual understanding, means shared understanding. When we have a mutual understanding with the person across, then the communication goes very smoothly, because the person knows that what we are, the communication becomes effective because the person very well understands that what I am trying to speak. Then clarification, asking questions to clarify the doubts is the key point of effective communication. Now, what is the importance of this effective communication? How this communication is important? First of all, it increases efficiency, because if the communication is effective, then it increases efficiency. Means whatever I'm trying to say to my students, whatever I'm trying to say to my colleagues, then the message is properly and clearly delivered, and the action obviously will be according to that. So increase efficiency, then resolves conflict. Means what I am trying to say to the other person, I need to be very clear. The choice of words, the emotions that I use, everything has to be proper. Because if my choice of words, my tone, my emotions which I am imbibing, if they are not clear, obviously the message will not go across clearly. So for conflict resolution, all these things are very important. So that is all about communication today. Thank you very much for patiently listening, and I hope all of you will be able to understand. Thank you once again.